Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, honoring Arbor Day on April 26th, with an ongoing commitment to sustainable stewardship and conservation of Missouri's forests. ChooseWood.com.
Mr. James Purgle, who has been a mainstay with his ice cream store for 40 years here in the community, and he would have the kids selling chips. And we started working on socially responsible business practices, so selling healthy snacks that would and that would be a way for the kids to fundraise. Their first big international trip was actually to Senegal and West Africa.
From selling snacks to importing handcrafted foreign goods, Go International has kids in East St. Louis seeing the bigger world and starting to make their place in it.
And the city doesn't have a lot of services that are available, but it's because there's not a lot of tax revenue, because there's not a lot of home ownership. Without the home ownership, you don't have much tax revenue coming in to pay for these things. And it was impressive to watch this kid who was a junior in high school breaking down these problems that affect her community and having a goal in mind of how to provide financial services.
I'm Sarah Fensky, and this is St. Louis on the Air. And before we move on, I want to remind you that the biggest source of St. Louis Public Radio's funding comes from listeners like you. Because you value what you hear on St. Louis on the Air, donate today. Go to stlpr.org/donate. That's stlpr.org/donate. The nonprofit Go International is focused on helping youth in East St. Louis. It offers classes in foreign languages, entrepreneurship, and martial arts, all for free. Its founder hopes to use these things to illuminate the possibilities around kids in tough circumstances. 15-year-old Dior Hampton has taken language, martial arts, and entrepreneur classes through Go International for about 6 years. Now, these days, her focus is Spanish. She's preparing to study abroad next year in Colombia for 6 months.
I feel like in our community, kids need like a break out of what's really going on, since there's a lot going on in our community. And especially for the younger kids, it's kind of overwhelming for them. So they need something that's going to break them out of reality for a quick minute and let them take a break to really think about something else besides what's going on in their community. So I feel like with these classes and with me being one of the first kids to go study abroad, I feel like kids are going to want to go to study abroad after I come back. They're going to feel more, how to explain it? Like, they're going to be excited to actually learn the language. And you could do any language. But I just feel like this is going to be their break. This is going to be their way of escaping reality from our community. And I feel like that's a big plus in my eyes.
Now, Dior Hampton's late mother spoke fluent Spanish. Dior remembers learning some Spanish when she was little. She wanted to be more connected to her mom, and continuing her Spanish studies through Go International has been a part of that. But she sees huge benefits even beyond that.
With me just knowing the basics of Spanish, I didn't got so many opportunities, especially this Colombia trip. All I got to say is, like, just work your best at whatever you want to do. You're eventually going to get what you want.
And that is Dior Hampton. She's an East St. Louis resident and a 10th grade student at Governor French Academy. Now, Seth Hamilton is the founder of Go International, and he joins us today to tell us more about its work. Seth, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
So, Seth, hearing Dior talk about these classes and learning Spanish as an escape from reality, that's a little bit heartbreaking. What is the reality for many of the kids you work with?
A lot of our kids are against a lot of struggles. I mean, you're looking at economic marginalization that's been going on for at this point for her community up to centuries, and that are still feeling the impacts. Where East St. Louis, as most people are familiar, is a predominantly African American community where it's a financial desert. There's not a lot of opportunities for good financial services. There are issues with education and the education system. Not to knock the schools. The schools are putting in tremendous work.
Sure.
we have a lot of kids who are behind, and it's like there's a giant system that is set up against them. Not to mention issues of, violence and drug addiction and things like that do occur. But we don't focus. We focus on those things in as far as our goal is to help kids to escape those things and to have greater opportunities to succeed within their own definition of success. We want to provide skills training to help develop marketable skills and human capital as individuals and for the community itself.
So Dior told our producer that she wants to go to Howard University after high school. That's a great school. It'd be an awesome choice. She also mentioned in the meantime that she's selling jewelry and produce and imported goods, and she's doing this through Go International. How does that work?
So we have an entrepreneurship class. We actually started with a local East St. Louis entrepreneur, Mr. James Purgle, who has been a mainstay with his ice cream store for 40 years here in the community. And he would have the kids selling chips. And we started working on socially responsible business practices, so selling healthy snacks. That would be a way for the kids to fundraise. Their first big international trip was actually to Senegal and West Africa. So we had a number of kids. They sold chips, and they paved their own way to take this life-changing trip. And afterwards, it became its own full-blown program in which our students now, we've had 17 kids who have traveled to 15 different countries. They've made contacts in the international markets. So Dior, for example, was one of the kids who in 2019 we did a tour going through Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. And we made contacts with a lot of people in markets, and they've been importing goods to sell here. So our traditional African cloths, jewelry, and just a number of other things. And so they're selling these things. They're learning business skills. They have to maintain, their retail sheets and things like that. They go out to the Tower Grove farmers markets on the weekends and sell this artisanry, as well as jewelry that they make themselves. And they learned that not only are they supporting themselves, but they're also supporting these other entrepreneurs around the world.
So these business skills that you're teaching and this entrepreneurship, this is tied right into this idea of seeing the world and these language classes that make it more feasible to see the world.
Absolutely. We try and integrate skills. We don't want to teach kids just a single skill to where they have to, live or die by that one thing, but rather having a plethora of skills that they can use in different ways and exposing them to, the world. The greater opportunities that are out there. It only builds on their capacity to change their own future and also to change their own community.
So that all makes total sense to me. How do martial arts fit into that mix?
So that was where I had initially started, but it's a character building, and there's a lot of character building that goes on in character development, things like integrity and courage and discipline. There's also the physical health aspect to it, but it's just another program that we have where our kids go out. They'll compete across the country. So we've had about 30 medals that our kids have won across 12 states now in the U.S. And even with that, there are still opportunities for event organization. Our kids in that trip to Senegal helped working with the Lionheart Initiative to organize Senegal's very first MMA event in the country's history, after which there was an opportunity to promote the sport, promote the gyms there, and it's really like bringing an industry to a country where there are jobs that now come out of it. There's now a Senegalese promotion that's run by somebody out of Dakar. There are more gyms. Thanks to the extended work of Lionheart. And we've also went down to Nicaragua, which is where our other major program is, run by a former student now, which I had spoken with Evie about a little bit more, or to a greater extent. But we with our kids from East St. Louis, organized an international jiu-jitsu event in which we had over 120 competitors from 7 different countries, and we're able to have a local economic impact of about $16,000 over 2 days that came into Nicaraguan cities, which does not sound like a large amount over a weekend, but taking into consideration the conditions of the local economy, where you have an average minimum wage of $125 a month, you're looking at a lot of salaries that are getting paid for hotels and things like that by organizing the event. Not to mention them managing the funds, interacting with people from all across the Spanish-speaking world, as we had people coming from Guatemala, Mexico, from Costa Rica, Honduras, El Salvador, and even a guy who flew all the way in from Canada.
Wow.
He's born in Nicaragua, but found out about it and paid to come all the way down to compete in the event. And that's our kids from East St. Louis who were helping to organize that, which for me personally was a big joy, because it was my kids from East St. Louis meeting my kids from Nicaragua, and them working together.
We're talking today to Seth Hamilton. He's the founder of Go International. It's doing some great work in East St. Louis, helping the kids there get to see other cultures, learn languages, learn martial arts. There's so much that goes into this program. And you're also doing financial literacy efforts. I understand that has caught the attention of the Federal Reserve. What's that program about?
Well, it's essentially the Federal Reserve has a full financial literacy program that they give out for free. And our goal has been to utilize and to proliferate that. We work, our headquarters is out of the Christian Activity Center in East St. Louis, but we're also working with Eastside Aligned, which is essentially like an alliance, you might say, of all the different after-school programs working in East St. Louis. And we basically teach financial literacy on all different aspects, whether it's the personal finance, where kids are learning about savings, investing. We had kids who competed in the stock market exchange game in Missouri this year. We have a young lady who is the first student out of East St. Louis to ever serve on the Federal Reserve Student Board of Directors.
Wow, that seems like a huge honor.
It is, and she wrote an essay to get in, breaking down the financial hangups and how they affected and led to the deaths of three other kids in her neighborhood that were teenagers who had been shot, but the ambulances took 45 minutes to get there, and the city doesn't have a lot of services that are available, but it's because there's not a lot of tax revenue, because there's not a lot of home ownership. Without the home ownership, you don't have much tax revenue coming in to pay for these things. And it was impressive to watch this kid who was a junior in high school breaking down these problems that affect her community and having a goal in mind of how to provide financial services, and now being in a position where she can learn from the Central Bank of the United States.
Yeah, and to also impact what it's doing. I mean, that's amazing to have a seat at that table.
Absolutely. And so we started working on getting we had a meeting just 2 weeks ago with the other after-school programs, and so the Federal Reserve is going to be giving free training to them. Our goal through doing so is to have 1/3 of all East St. Louis youth learning financial literacy. We're in the process of getting this to the school district as well, which over time could result in 5,000 kids, learning about basic finance, local economics, national economics, all the way from kindergarten up through the high school level, and can be a really big game changer. And the other aspect to this that is quite important that I need to mention is Scott Credit Union, who has established a credit union for children at the CAC through our partnership. And so we've had kids who they would go and they would send somebody some representatives from Scott Credit Union to provide banking services. The kids have opened protected savings accounts where they're the only ones with access to it. They are able to do a credit check to make sure there's nothing on their name, and then the kids have been just meeting up with them, saving money. As of right now, prior to the pandemic, we had 20 kids so far who had started savings accounts up. They have saved a good deal of money. And even during the pandemic, the thing that has struck me the most is most of them are also entrepreneur students. So they run their own businesses selling snacks, eyelashes, accessories, jewelry, etc. And I was concerned that they would be calling up to try and get the money out, especially in these desperate times. And I've only had one kid who was calling up to try and get money from their account to get pizza and wings.
Everybody else wanted to keep saving it and see it compound.
That's right, and they were stocking it away.
That's terrific.
They were running their businesses, a lot of times providing important things. Some of them even continued with the gardening program. From the jewelry and the healthy snacks, the kids invested in a garden. In the last 2 years, they produced 2 tons of food, running not just selling produce not just on the weekends at Tower Grove, but also running their own local farmers market to provide healthy organic produce for their own community, and even taking the seeds and starting gardens themselves with their neighbors.
Well, Seth, this is such impressive stuff. It's so great to hear about all these things that these kids are participating in. It sounds like really seizing the day on. I'm curious to know, though, you're providing all of this to these kids without charging them. Where does your financial support come from?
Well, we depend on donors and partners. And so we have a simple system. Our goal right now is to increase our number of monthly donors. We have a simple plan. $25 a month helps a kid start a business. $50 a month helps a kid to do competitions all across the country. And $100 a month helps to send a kid abroad to study. And so we've got 3 kids who are getting ready to study abroad in Colombia, 2 that will be going in fall, 1 that will be going in the following January. We have, out of our Mandarin Chinese class, a number of kids who are getting ready. They got an invitation to go to Singapore, where they're going to get to practice their Chinese, and it's also the largest green area for an urban environment, where 50% of the environment is that there's some element of agriculture present. And so learning more about urban agriculture for them as well. So again, always trying to hit multiple fields with each thing that they do.
Well, that just sounds so great to hear about. And it sounds like there's plenty of ways that people can get involved in helping this organization and to donate, to give these kids these kind of opportunities. If you want more information about that, you can go to go-int, that's INT.org. We'll also have that linked on our website. That's stlpublicradio.org for those who want to learn more about what Seth is doing and the opportunities for these kids that's coming out of Go International. And Seth Hamilton, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, honoring Arbor Day on April 26th with an ongoing commitment to sustainable stewardship and conservation of Missouri's forests. ChooseWood.com.